Well, Warami in the language of the Gadigal clan, whose country I'm coming to you from. And in fact, behind me is a magnificent Gadi, which is the grass tree, Xanthorrhoea, that the Gadigal were responsible for supporting through its life as it supported them. And this country I'm on is where Sydney University's main campus sits in Sydney at Camperdown, near the Sydney CBD. And I'd like to acknowledge the ancestors past and present of the Gadigal and their great leaders that they have now and all of the community. And indeed, I'd like to acknowledge all of the community of Sydney and all the other communities on whose countries we're meeting from today. I am Naya Jaky, Naya Namiti Mitong, and I'm Raju in my language. Hello, I'm Naragu of the Snowy Mountains, so I'm fortunate to be a guest in Gadigal country. So over to you, Ruth, for some housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to Spinning a Better Yarn for June. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you to turn off your screens and mute while Jaky's speaking until we have the discussion session at the end. When you are invited to turn your screens back on and keep yourself muted when you're not talking. And in the discussion session, we will prioritize Indigenous participants who want to contribute. So I think that's about it. I'll hand it back to Jaky.
Didgerigura in the language of Sydney. Thank you, Ruth. So unfortunately, Mujahid is not available today. He may come online, but he had to go back to his home in northwest Pakistan in Swat because he had sorry business, which means there's a death in the community and things that he needs to attend to. And on the brighter side, he's also going to be doing some field work for his PhD. And the subject of his discussion today is actually central to the work he's doing for his PhD at the University of Sydney, which in some ways, like Leslie Woods' own work about helping her own community, the Nyimpa people, to engage more with linguistics and language learning about their own language, Nyimpa. And I'm trying to do now, inspired by Leslie, with my own mob, Naragu. We've had decades of discussions about this now, Leslie. So, and I'm also inspired by what Mujahid's doing in Swat amongst his Torwali community. The language is also called Torwali. The tribal group is Torwali and the language is Torwali. And I have his notes for today that I will share and speak to. But I also want to say that today, because Mujahid couldn't join and I'm speaking, I will say with him rather than for him, because we collaborate. I have found over my now rather long career around working with Indigenous languages and communities that it's very sustaining to have the opportunity to work with people from international Indigenous communities and outside Australia, but that's what I mean by that. And it's sustaining because I find so many commonalities, and there's a kind of comfort in knowing that the challenges that you face are shared elsewhere, that they're not really unique. So it's not only the problem of, say, my own Naragu community or any other community in Australia. It's something that Indigenous communities worldwide face. And one of these challenges is, of course, the challenge of how to honour our languages in the education systems of our countries that are largely state-based. Oh, is that somebody else there? They're dominated by state policy and state education systems. And in Australia, we've had some, I guess, breakthroughs in the last couple of decades now, nearly, but certainly the last 15 years in New South Wales. I was fortunate to be able to have the opportunity to work on developing a New South Wales Aboriginal languages syllabus, K to 10. And then from that, I had the opportunity to work on the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority, ACARA, national Australian curriculum. And I specialised in the curriculum for languages, and particularly in the teaching, the framework for teaching Aboriginal languages and Torres Strait Islander languages. And I have found in talking to Mujahid and now having him working with me as my PhD student, that it's been fascinating to see how many similarities there still are. Pakistan is a country that has two national languages, Urdu, which is a local language, and English, which is not, it's introduced. And Urdu is an unusual language because it's not really anybody's first language, if you like, an indigenous language of any community. It's a hybrid language that has its roots in a number of other languages, not only of the Pakistan, what's now the country of Pakistan, but also the region in general. And the script that it's written in, of course, is Arabic, because that is the language of the script of the Islamic world. And indeed, of course, the Quran is in Arabic, so that for religious reasons, that script is preferred. So all the local indigenous languages, there are at least, I think there are 73 or 74, at least, local indigenous languages. Some of them have very large speaker populations of millions, and others, like Mujahid's, have a little over, say, 140 or so thousand. And then there are much smaller speaker communities in the numbering, in the thousands. These two languages that aren't really anybody's, if you like, indigenous language for Pakistan, just like in Australia, where English is the dominant language and it's nobody's indigenous language in Australia, have become the languages of the state, and the state is prioritizing learning in Urdu and English over learning in any other languages, even the other big languages that are provincial languages and do have a place in the education system in Pakistan. We have it, so you can see the parallels with Australia, where we're able to now teach, mandated by the Australian curriculum, teach an Aboriginal language or a Torres Strait Islander language, or more than one, in any school in Australia, but it rarely happens. It's certainly increasing, and there are pockets where it's very much the case that schools are supportive of languages. But our great bilingual education programs in the top part of Australia, in the Northern Territory, were in 2009 put back decades by the Territory mandating that education should be, for the first, I think, 5 or so hours of the day, but basically the bulk of the day of education should be in English, not in any of the local languages. And fortunately, there are schools like Jakelin which have pushed back against this and just continue to teach. I think Jakelin teaches in about 12 languages, which is amazing. It's wonderful to go into their classrooms. And so, it's the same kind of mess that Mujahid faces in Pakistan. He has to teach in Urdu, or Pashto is the other dominant language in the area. That is an indigenous language, but not indigenous to Swat, where he comes from. And also he teaches English and teaches in English. But Torwali, which is the language that all his students speak, is something that he's not allowed to teach in. And when he does teach in it, he gets letters from the education department accusing him of anti-state activities. So this is, a really big complication for for Mujahid that has resonance for us in Australia. Yes, and Ruth has just put in the chat 2 articles that Muji and I have published, one very recently about music, dance performance and music, and the challenges the Torwali face in being able to even sing in their language and to dance, and that's been impacted upon as a result of religious extremism. So, you know, Mujahid wants to bring into his curriculum all the local practices, as we want to in Australia as Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people. We want to be able to be ourselves in the curriculum, you know, and particularly for our own community students. I mean, I would love to see my daughter learning, now she's at university level, but learning something in Ngarigu, and I hope in the future we will. Yeah, so I will now move to sharing my screen and working my way through Mujahid's presentation. I do hope he comes online, but I think it's looking unlikely at this stage. So I acknowledge Mujahid and his people, the Torwali of Swat in northwest Pakistan, and I pay respect to their elders past and present, and to community leaders like Mujahid who are doing what they can to support their language and their cultural practices for the future of their community. Right. Share. There you go. I'm a genius. I made it work. So, and yeah. Okay. So participants can now see my application. Good. So, yes, Ruth, everybody can see this clearly? Yeah.
Looks good.
Good. So this is the area that I'm talking about. So this is Pakistan, which, you know, sits alongside India, partitioned in 1947. But this area itself of Swat was not partitioned until 1967. When it didn't join Pakistan until 1967, when the ruler of Swat, it was a kingdom of its own, the Wali of Swat, agreed that rather than have Pakistan invade, which was the threat, the veiled threat, I could say, but I think it was pretty overt. So he agreed to join Pakistan. But it is an area that is technically part of the region we call Afghanistan as well. The cultural world there and the linguistic world is much more cognate with that northwest Central Asian area than it is with the lower area in Pakistan. So the language of that Mujahid speaks has been described as Dardic, described actually right back to the days of Greek historians. Alexander the Great came through this region some more than 2,000 years ago, and so the Dardic people speak Indo-European. They're in the Indo-European family group of languages. There is a project now by a man, Henrik Liljegren from Stockholm University, to do an aerial survey of the languages in this area. I think that was my watch talking to me then, sorry. He challenges the idea that these are Dardic, that there's a group called Dardic, and he's looking at through sort of linguistic subgrouping, I guess doing a different kind of analysis of the region. But for the moment, it's considered to be a Dardic language, Torwali, and part of a group of about maybe up to 20 other languages that fit into that group. Of course, it's interesting to talk about what Liljegren says about these Dardic languages, because it's not what the Torwalis say. They are proudly Dardic. They talk about being Dards, and that was, I believe, a word that was actually first used, as I said, in, Attic times, so in ancient Greek writing about the area. So I respect what the Torwalis have to say, whatever ends up coming out of any other historical linguistics project, aerial survey done by people who aren't from these communities. This is how they understand themselves. So, and this is where the area fits. And Mujahid's area is, let me see, he's actually put it here in this smaller space. So basically he lives on the banks of a huge Himalayan, it's the Himalayan region, by the way. The 14 of the highest mountains in the world are in this area, including K2, which is a bit north, towards China, up north. And some people say that actually K2 may even be higher than Everest. So it's a very steep mountainous area. People live in terraced, you could say, agricultural fields up the valleys. And the Swat River runs through. There are two groups of Torwalis. One live on the Chal Valley, and they speak another dialect to Mujahids, which is known as the Bahraini dialect, and that's from this area up to Kalam, which is the famous forested area. So he lives at about 1,400 meters, the bottom of the valley, and immediately behind him rises up thousands of meters. So when he says to me, I'm going for a stroll up, a bit of a hike, he means he's going vertically up thousands of meters, and then he hits high pastures where they used to take their cattle. So if you could imagine that kind of region, that's where he's from. I like this. He says this is a colonized map of Swat district by the dominant Pashtun. So this is an area that was Islamicized and colonized by the Yusufzai Pashtun, who came across from the region we call Afghanistan now. And there is tension between the Dardic peoples and the Pashtun. And this is a very unpopular thing to say. So for him to write this and say this publicly in Pakistan, he would get a lot of people on social media after him. So again, colonization is not always only by the British. So back to my point about Mujahid not being allowed to teach in his language, Torwali. He did a study for his master's thesis about how Torwali students learn in his classes. And he did a study, a participant action research, participant observation, action research kind of study where he included the voice of his students. So he taught them in Torwali exclusively and found that, surprise, surprise, their grades went up dramatically. And so this is his mind map, if you like, of what it is like. This is learning in Pashto or Urdu or English. And then, this is learning in Torwali. And the teacher sends a message through, if he's speaking in Pashto or Urdu or English, and it ends up as this scramble in the student's mind. And of course, it's unscrambled if it's then resent to the student in Torwali. Surprise, surprise, if you speak to a student in their own language, they're going to understand you. There's nothing remarkable about this. But I found myself, when I was designing the framework for teaching Aboriginal languages and Torres Strait Islander languages for ACARA, I had very experienced educators saying to me, oh, no, all students in Australia speak English. There really is not a problem. And, we're absolutely convinced. And I really had to argue that, there are students in Australia, Aboriginal, this is in the Indigenous world of Australia, forget about all the migrant groups who struggle with English, but oh no, there are no, I said there are Aboriginal communities where English is just an irrelevant language. People might operate, and if they speak English, it's the very kind of advanced form of Aboriginal English. That sounded like it might have been Mujahid coming online. Is that you, Mujahid? Are you there? Maybe?
Yeah.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Mujahid, can you see the screen?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I can see the screen and hello and good morning from Pakistan. I hope this is a very good afternoon in Australia.
Well, in Sydney, it's sunny and beautiful. So after
Yeah,
all,
it's sunny and very hot here. Not hot, but the entire country is kind of under very hot views. You know, heat,
well,
heat.
it's good to
Yeah.
have you online. Chi. I hope you're well.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I'm good. Yeah, thank you. And
and
maybe I apologize for the like the internet connection is not that much good here. So
would you like to take over? I've got, and you can tell me how to move. So I've got this. I've just been talking. You may have heard me about your
yeah,
the
this is
scrambling effect.
yeah. Uh-huh. So you can if you don't mind because my internet is not working. That's why I just like I'm just using this audio only audio. If I will connect to video, so it will interrupt my talk, right?
Right. Okay. So
Uh,
so
yeah, this is I think yeah you can yeah I think it's fine
so
and
I will
mhm.
keep talking to your paper and you can jump in as
Yeah,
you
yeah,
wish.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No
Right.
problem.
This is how we roll, everybody. This is Indigenous researchers working together. I think it's how non-Indigenous researchers work as well. So it's in our little world of Indigenous language study. So I've just been explaining, you know, the confusion that occurs when you try to teach students in a language they actually don't speak, and that your study demonstrated this, and your results from your study were, and the comments from the students were that it was wonderful to do Mujahid's classes because they actually understood the content of the group.
This is just like if a teacher if this is just like a teacher having a set of problem and solutions, right? You can see a clear thing in the mind, and when he or she you know uh, tries to deliver this to a non, I mean, like for example, a Pashto speaker or Urdu speaker or English speaker teacher teaching in a classroom, and the students are Torwali, or they are like they don't know the teacher what the language what the teacher uses, right? So these things happen. There is a confusion creates in the mind of the student. Either he or she will try to memorize thing, or like a chaos situation. So this is how, like, this is the real situation in the classroom.
So I am now moving on to this comment that you've made, and your, again, lovely diagram about confusion and ideas. So and sharing of ideas in the classroom between students and teachers. So Mujahid says that he's tried decolonizing education in his school and has achieved some interesting outcomes. He had arranged students in groups to test their cognitive power in understanding different languages. And organized, he had two student groups, Torwali and a Pashtun student. In the first lecture, he used Pashto language as a medium of instruction and asked the students to write down their thinking about this lecture. The Pashtun student came up with some brilliant ideas, while the Torwali student tried his best, knowing a little bit of Pashto because it's spoken in the region, but it's not his main language system. The Torwali student tried his best but couldn't achieve the desired outcomes. He also did a lecture using Torwali language as the medium of instruction, and in this he noticed that the Torwali student was extraordinary, surprise, surprise, because it's in his language, while the Pashtun student hardly picked up any of the lecture. So Pashtuns generally in the area don't really speak Torwali because, again, as I mentioned earlier, Mujahid has pointed out that the area is colonized by Pashtun. So it's like in Australia, why would the dominant English-speaking Australian population bother learning an Aboriginal language? Well, they don't. And hopefully into the future this will change. But
This is yeah, Jaky. sorry to cut, but I hope that
Mm-mm.
my internet is not working properly.
It's your
This is
paper.
a long, yeah, this is a long lost, lasting colonization everywhere. Like I mean, the internal Pakistan, you can see these people are, pushing English everywhere. Even the communities are indigenous, Torwali, Pashtun, whatever. But then, if when it comes to our area, so we are dominated by these, the Pashtun tribes or the Pashtun people. So they are trying, like what the other trying on them, and then they tried on us and things. And for example, in our, like, if the Torwalis, they are also, the recently the, like, the thing happened with Badeshi. So Badeshi language just died because of the Torwali language people around them. Like the Torwali were a dominant language at that area. So that's why whenever something is dominant, so it really affects, the subordinate languages or the group of people. So this is how, like, in the Torwali areas, and high school and higher secondary school, most of the teachers, they are Pashtun. And because in the Torwali area there is no there are no educational institutions, so we always faced all these troubles and, difficulties to having quality education and to go further, like for college and universities, right? So then
Yeah.
the Torwali communities or the marginalized communities, they just failed to achieve what they really want. And so on the other hand, the Pashtun people or the non-Torwali people here in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they are getting good quality education, and then they pass all these, like these educational or the other tests and become the teacher in our area. And for this too, I mean, for this system too, we are fighting. Like we are trying, we are trying the Torwali area to be considered as hard area. Like in terms of merit, or in terms of all these appointments, or the vacancies things. But still, there is nothing, I mean, so far nothing has happened, even in this regard too. Like, from all the sides, we are marginalized, we are colonized. And a few, like, people like me, a group of people, or a group of activists, social activists, they are pushing back. And let's see, we still got some hope, but let's see what comes.
So the Mujahid then said that, this is how, so he's talking obviously from his own personal experiences of teaching in many different schools.
This is how most of the teachers, after teaching English classroom or after teaching the English lecture, this is what they do on the blackboard or the whiteboard. I mean, you can see word meaning. Actually, this is not the word meaning. This is a clear confusion. For example, I mean, you can see, like, for example, foreign, and this is the meaning in Urdu. So what I do like, I say like word, and then Urdu or whatever language I use to translate. This is not the meaning. This is a translation. This is what from the very beginning our students get confused. They said, okay, foreign. So the meaning of foreign is Behrun, and Behrun is this Behrun word, or the meaning, they are written on the board, they are in Urdu. Even still, the Torwali students, yes, this word, yes. The Torwali students will not understand what Behrun, what foreign, what prayer, what afraid, So Torwali students, because the teacher will try to translate this thing in Urdu. So the same way, for example, for me or for all my students, we got the same sense. I mean, for us, it's either Urdu, Pashto, English, like, because all these are dominant languages. We don't need to do anything with this. What I do, for example, if I'm teaching an English classroom, so end of the day or end of the lecture, I don't do things like that. But my best try is to make the student understand in Torwali, right? So what I do, I write the English word, and then translate into Urdu, then Pashto, then Torwali. So along with Torwali, I really want the Torwali students, they, you know, they need to understand and learn Urdu and Pashto as well. This is what my PhD is about, you know. This is what my PhD is about, to make the student understand on the basis of Torwali, and then they can learn the grammar of Urdu, the grammar of Pashto language, or the grammar of any other dialect language in the region.
So with his students, as he said here, there's not a single student whose mother tongue is Urdu. 100% of his students belong to the Torwali community and speak Torwali language. There are a few Pashto speakers. Now, I'm moving down to the blackboard now. So in addition to, you know, the challenges of teaching effectively, the conditions in which Mujahid and other teachers teach are shockingly, they're just appalling. And this is his blackboard in the primary school, I believe.
This is what,
his whiteboard, I should say.
Leslie, this is what I do. I mean, this is what I do: English, Urdu, and then use. You know, if the class is English, and you know, definitely because we are being forced to use Urdu language. You know, because Torwali is not allowed as a language of instruction, as a medium of instruction. So this is like I, and Urdu, it's me, you can see, and then I use. I am a teacher, so I have to use what exactly this I is, right? Mostly the teacher will say I may. They will just, you know, shut up here, and then the student will get confused because the Torwali student don't know what is I or what is may, you know. So you have to use an English, then they will little bit understand that, okay, this is the meaning of I. And this picture is just to show you how our infrastructure system is working, you know. Like this is a public sector school, and you can see this whiteboard, you know, like since this is happening like since last, when I was teaching there. So it was the same like for, I changed some of them, but being, you know, individually we can't do it. So this is a public sector school, and every month the monitoring team, the monitoring and evaluation team, they're coming to school, the education officers, they visit schools. But what they do, they torture the teaching staff most of the time. You know, why you are not in school, why you are late. They will never understand you, what you are teaching, how you are teaching, what are the outcomes, you know, what are the students learning. So they never, their focus is never being this stuff.
So they also they have no feeling for understanding the community responsibilities of the local
no. Being a teacher in this build like for more than 5 years in different public and private sector schools, you know. Okay, this is now a non-Torwali teacher explain English tenses in Urdu. So this is completely our dilemma, you know, an illusion, you know. Who knows like what's happening here, because the teacher is Pashtun and the tenses are English, and he is trying to you know, to teach all this stuff in Urdu. So this is like, you know, like this is a complete confusion for the indigenous students.
So in addition to appalling teaching conditions, whiteboards with holes in them, some schools don't even have roofs. One of Mujahid's colleagues, Rahim Sabith, teaches in a school that was almost demolished at one point and now doesn't have a roof at all, and he teaches even in the winter in the snow with the children sitting outside on the ground. Mujahid's
this is yeah, sorry to cut you, but this is also colonization, you know. In the dense Pashtuns, or in the dense like these Yusufzai areas down in the Swat or elsewhere, or Peshawar, or in the big cities where the majority is Pashtun speaker, right? So there, what they do, they provided each and everything, because they, you know, their voice is always heard, you know. And these areas are ignored, marginalized, colonized, and only a few voices are there, and most of the time these voices being pushed, right?
And one of the things Mujahid's been doing, I'm not sure who's put it in the talk, but is attempting to have girls educated and educated beyond year 10. But even getting to year 10 is a challenge, and he is persecuted for supporting girls' education because many people who are extremists in the area still think that extremist in terms of their religious beliefs, they still believe that girls should not be educated and should stay in the domestic sphere and be illiterate. And
yeah, this is not only an honor issue, but you know, sometimes the like-minded people are some of the activist friend. When we sit together, have some coffee, chai, and talk, you know, the same yarning, you know, like we call it jarga or gupshup, right? So the same thing we are doing here, you know, very, you can see, like informally, right? And we thought that all these people, they are trying to keep us like this. So end of the day, you know, we won't be able to, you know, like to fight back for the rights of these marginalized people. So that's why they are keeping us, you know, like this.
so I think that was your last slide, Mujahid. So I'll stop sharing, and we're at 2:43, and I'm just wondering if anybody wanted to ask any questions at this stage, or
yeah, I mean, this is a yarning, you know, this is a discussion, so you can ask me questions. I'm here to answer, or some of the friend, they can jump and, you know.
so we're opening it up for some questions now. And as Mujahid said, we're sort of treating it as a kind of opportunity to be yarning. Is it better if I keep my video off, Mujahid? Does that save your data a bit? Saves your internet?
I think that's okay. That's okay, no problem. I think, but when I'll on my video, so it will make problem.
Okay. So, hi, Leslie. You might like to comment as somebody who's working on educating your community about their language.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to say thanks, Mujahid, for sharing your story of your struggles with language in your community with us. It's really heartening, as Jaky said, to hear, you know, stories that are kind of similar to our own and our own struggles. But I have to say, we're not dealing with a lot of the things that you deal with. You've got different layers of difficulty in your community, and I mean, I respect and honor what you're doing for your language and for your community. It's not a question as such, it's just a comment. Yeah, it's really very interesting to hear your story, so thank you.
I'm muted. That's hilarious. I was just saying my comment, you'd think that years of unmuting and muting, I'd have this down pat. But I was just going to say that for me, it's really interesting working with Mujahid as another Indigenous person. I didn't really expect, he's, I guess, the main person I'm working with outside Australia now, and in an intensive way. And I didn't expect to work on languages of Pakistan, but I'm going to say this now because it, I guess it speaks to what we've talked about through the whole series, which is ethical practice in linguistic research, but in all research, and you know, very much the subject of Leslie's forthcoming book. and her previous master's PhD, that you don't just lob into an Indigenous community and have a lovely touristic experience and leave. I first went to Pakistan in 2017 and met with Mujahid and some of his community members and an organization that he worked with, Idara Baraya Tarimo Taraki, and he is that organization is working for education and I guess general activism around language and culture in the region. And Mujahid and other researchers from the community were very engaged with their projects, but supported by external funding largely, but not really having the opportunity to engage more broadly, I guess, with the world of linguistics. And Mujahid in particular said to me that he hoped to become a professor. That was what he aimed to do. We were talking about his role as a teacher and my experience with developing educational curriculum. And I said, well, you know, to be a professor, you probably need to get a PhD. And that sort of began the journey that I had with him to, I guess, build his academic profile. He had a lot of experience and indeed had already published a book about conversational Torwali. So that that was the first book that was ever available for anybody coming into his area, you know, people from Pakistan, who it's a very big tourist area, you can imagine, with the scenic mountains and everything there. This book was the first little guide. Like we have these guides, you go somewhere and you want to greet people or ask for some directions or something, and just generally begin some conversation. And so he wrote this trilingual book as a conversation guide. And then I have worked with him to develop some, I guess, more some peer-reviewed publications. So there's a couple there in the chat, and he's got some of his own solo-authored publications now. And you know, he then worked up a project and won a scholarship through the Centre for the Brain and Mind at the University of Sydney to do a PhD. And I think, you know, at all stages, it's tempting for me to, I guess, be the lead author or the, you know, think of this as my new field of research for myself, but it's not. It's always Mujahid's work. And I'm fortunate to have a voice in the work as well, which he kindly shares. But even recently, when we were publishing the song paper, we had a discussion about whether my name should even be on the paper. And he said, no, look, you know, we've done this work together. So I'm the second author. But my experience with the Academy is that usually people who are so-called senior researchers or lead researchers or responsible researchers or whatever, who have students working with them or other colleagues or community members, they tend to take the lead spot. They're the first author on things, even if they include other authors who are from the community or who might be their students. And I think that that's wrong. And I feel very humbled that I am included in these papers. I mean, we very much do produce them together, but it's also the case that I am not going to just hang on to, oh, this is my Torwali research now. It's Mujahid's Torwali research, and it's his language. And he helps me with my Ngurugu research and a project I've got with Wiradjuri community at the moment. He's been helping with filming and documenting, but at no point will it be our Wiradjuri project. It's the Wiradjuri's Wiradjuri project. And I think that that's something that I've learnt from working with Mujahid in a very focused way on developing these particularly peer-reviewed publications, where there is this temptation to, like, you know, obviously I would like to have, you know, 5 new publications with myself as lead author, because that's what the ERA, Excellence in Research in Australia, measures are for my university. They are the measures for me if I'm applying for grants or just the, building my own profile. But I really don't give two hoots about my own profile in that way at all. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to work with other people on their languages. And I just never want to be the person who is the one who is famous for Torwali, for example. I already get people saying, oh, you're an expert on Pakistani languages. And I said recently to Mujahid, I'm no kind of expert on Pakistani languages. I'm fortunate to be learning from him. I think, Mujahid, one of your outcomes for the PhD was if I can speak some Torwali at the end of it, he will have succeeded. So he's practicing teaching me Torwali and thinking about
this is also the part of my PhD. So this is one of the outcomes,
So I mean, I think for me this is such a.
I mean, if so
great
far
collaboration.
if you don't understand the language, but you know a little bit about the structure, how the languages work, right? How the
Yeah.
language is working. So I hope still some people in Pakistan they think that you got the expertise in Pakistani languages, which is fine. I mean, yeah. So this is how things work, right? So, and this, I really appreciate this yarning group, and then we can, as I says everywhere, as I say everywhere, that you people are most welcome anytime to my part of the world. That's very cheap to be here. I mean, not that much expensive. Having a little amount of money, you can explore the whole part of the world. Having like meeting indigenous people, to know the ground realities and things. So this virtual yarning maybe in the future could be something in practical. We can visit each other's areas to explore same indigenous activities and practices.
Yeah. I think that's one of the great things, building these relationships, and outside Australia as well as within Australia, and having the opportunity, as I said, it's not about having exotic touristic experiences. It's about going to places and saying, how can I assist? And then following through. Believe me, it's been no small effort, has it, Mujahid? For Mujahid in particular, to get to be able to be a student at the University of Sydney. But it's one that we've shared, and many others at Sydney have shared as well. The Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research at Sydney, Duncan Iverson, who's just moved out of that position, but now talks about, Mujahid's area, Pakistan, and the Torwali community as, part of our everyday experience at Sydney. When I was first going there, it was, oh no, you can't go there. That's a red zone on the.
Yeah, now it's kind of normalized,
It's normalized.
being an indigenous students from this part of the world. And also Jaky, Janelle, maybe some other people, they know that, Kashif Khan, he is a dominant, we can say dominant Pashtun, but he always at the unis, he always follows me, right? And I am going to meet him with different people. This is Kashif, my friend. Even he is like in a second year of PhD, right? And yeah, he spent more than a year in Australia, but he was kind of very, like very, you can say, maybe he was very shy, or I don't know what is the word for this, but he was always thinking, and he was always living in a separate corner. And now he is kind of very active and coming to uni and asking me. We are going to the library, and also I have got some registrations for him and different events. So he is kind of very happy now, and he said, okay, because at least someone can speak Pashto with me and I can share my thoughts. So this when we go somewhere internationally, so this is what happens between indigenous and non-indigenous people. from this part of the world. You know, they are not what they are. You know, they are not what they are here. I mean, they got a different perspective when they are like communities in Australia and United States or elsewhere. So and here, for example, they are always even when we first met Kashif, so he was thinking, okay, what is this language? What is Torwali actually? I mean, he is a PhD scholar, you know, like he doesn't know about the 74 languages of Pakistan. And then I explain each and everything, and now he is kind of, okay, Torwali is this, Torwali is that. So when he will come back, or maybe still on phone or in online events and conversations, he tells people that, you know, okay, Mujahid Torwali, or you know, like there are people who are not Pashtuns, and the north, they are Dardik communities, and then they are Kohistanis, and then further Khawar, Shina, Balti, Torwali, Gujar, Indus Kohistani, Mayo, all these communities. So he got a, you know, because of this, you know, because of this thing or PhD, or because of this circling, yarning. So now Kashif knows much more about the indigenous things in Pakistan. So when we have, you know, when we have more students from this area, from anywhere in Pakistan, then, you know, at least we can talk to them, we can explain things to them, like, okay, you are doing PhD from Sydney, but you have to know like what's going back on, you know, in your part of the world. So you have to. So yeah. So this is how then this is how then they are going to accept us, right?
That's a really good point, and speaks to what I was saying at the beginning, that I feel very nourished by my engagement with Indigenous people all over the world outside Australia, because I see so many similarities between our own experiences, and particularly the experiences of being colonized, including by universities. And I think it is. I loved what you just said, because I thought Kashif is one of my students as well. He's from Waziristan, as Mujahid was saying, and I was concerned that there could be some, you know, also some consequences for having Mujahid and Kashif in connection because of the political situation, Kashif's politics, and but in the end, it's actually turned out to be a wonderful way for, as Mujahid said, Kashif to learn about the smaller Indigenous groups in the region that he comes from. And it took Sydney University bringing him here and bringing him together with Mujahid. We met Kashif at a conference in Lahore in Pakistan, and Kashif ended up applying to Sydney to be a student. But the great outcome is this understanding Kashif now has as one of the colonial group in Mujahid's region. He can speak now up to the politics of the oppressed Indigenous minorities in the area of where Mujahid comes from. I can see people are actually having to leave now, so maybe are there any other questions today? Ruth, did you want to wind up? And thank you so much, Mujahid, for coming online. Yeah, Leslie.
I just have another.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm fine. I was just saying.
Okay. I just wanted to say, you know, I really love the way that you and Jaky work together, and, you know, this idea that Jaky is not kind of trying to muscle in on your kind of and say that she's the
I was thinking about it. No, never.
I think that's something, you know, in Australia we can learn a bit more about that here in our own university systems as well. You know, like if you're working on a language, it doesn't mean you can't put your own language. That is quite kind of what has happened, probably maybe historically, but maybe not so much altogether historically with Australian languages as well, where people kind of claim that language as their own. And I've heard that, you know, some linguists will even warn other linguists off you know, that's my language. Stay away. It's not your language at all. It belongs to the Indigenous people, you know. So I think that that's something I've found really hard to, I don't know, deal with. That's probably not the right word, but it's hard to kind of accept that someone would claim your language and your, you know, things as their own, and it's their kind of material or their kind of right to do that. That's just, you know, and so I loved the way that you talked about the way, you know, you work with Mujahid and you two work together. So that
I think it's important to have those conversations
really nice.
too. As I said, even recently when we were publishing this paper, and I thought, and I think at one point Mujahid thought that he decided that some part of the paper wasn't up to the standard that he'd like it to be, his own part of it. No, I thought it was great, but you know, so that's another thing. Collaborating supports, you know, you support each other doing that. So I could say, no, I like this bit where you've written in your own voice. It's terrific, you know. And I said, and actually that's what makes me think, well, maybe this is really your paper, not mine. And then he thought that I was actually, I think at one point, Mujahid, you thought I was saying I didn't want to be on this paper because it's not up to my standard. And I was like, far from it. You know, actually, it's a great privilege, it's actually a privilege. And I don't mean that in a kind of cutesy way. It's actually a privilege when Indigenous people agree to you being part of their own knowledge, thinking about their own knowledge, the development of their own way of talking about their knowledge, and that includes talking about languages and cultural practices, and you know, and when people invite you to be part of that, it's not you asking them, it's them asking you, and I think that's for me the flipping of it. And I've never really had an experience, I guess, where it's been so so clear to me just how to do this. And I think it takes working with somebody intensively on various projects, as we have, Mujahid and myself. But Leslie, you're thinking, you know, being involved with your work on thinking through what is ethical research and how do you privilege the voice that should be privileged and back out of it a bit yourself. And our universities don't easily allow us to do this. As I said, every time I'm second author or third author or whatever, or second on a grant, or it's, you know, that like even, you know, they will say to you in developing the ERA rankings, oh, well, you're second on this, so it doesn't really count. And sometimes my name just disappears, particularly with grants. It's whoever the lead is, like, and I think and now I'm part of the College of Experts for the Australian Research Council. I see this playing out all the time. It's the people who are
Jaky,
the lead.
Ruth, yeah, can I say something? I have to go because I have got a lot of guests here and I couldn't sleep at all since I am, you know, traveling from Sydney. So it was very great to share my experience with you people, and please do invite me for the next, like for the yarning sessions. I'll be always there, and all the kids you can say are here. I'll just on my camera literally, so they just want me to be free to go towards the guests. So we have a very unfortunate incident here. Jaky knows about that, so I am very, you know, heartbroken. Yeah, how are you?
Hello, everybody. Chikachi.
Hello, Yamagara.
So that is Azan, Ashal, and Ziba, Mujahid's children.
You're beautiful, Borai. They're gorgeous.
Burai, yeah, that's right. Thankali Burai, but they're not Thankali. They're very fit.
These are the futures intellectual, maybe at Sydney or elsewhere, right? So thank you very much, and I have to go because all the guests are waiting for me to meet me, right? Thank you very much, and if there is anything, you can email me, Ruth. Thank you for all the arrangements, everything, you know. It was very great to be part of this event. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mujahid.
Okay, thanks, Mujahid. So I guess that winds up our session, and a lot of people have had to leave anyway. So